Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to start by thanking you for the opportunity to be here today um, and share our process in doctoral thesis that is being developed and listen to contributions to improve it. I'm Fernanda. I'm from Brazil. And the title of the research that I will share today is Distance Learning in Physical Education, an analysis about the practical knowledge. It is being supervised by Dr. Ana Rosa Jaqueira from Universidade de Coimbra and Dr. Raquel Vilardi from Universidade do Estado do Rio de Janeiro. Um, I would like to start discussing about the distance learning expansion in Brazil. Recently, the number of registrations in that modality is rising, and in 2024, it surpassed the number of registrations in-person modality. And that shows that this kind of learning process is expanding in Brazilian higher education. And this is a way to reach people who live outside big cities and otherwise would not have access to higher education. And considering that expansion, it is necessary to understand how this format is developed in the moment. And this is especially relevant considering courses as, for example, physical education that require the learning of a knowledge that is practical. And for this reason, the question that guides us in this research is which strategies are used to guarantee of the learning of practical knowledge in distance learning, higher education, physical education courses in Brazilian public institutions specifically. And we have a hypothesis that this kind of knowledge requires moments, in-person moments with students to guarantee the interaction that that kind of knowledge needs. So we understand that it is relevant to investigate that subject for two main reasons. The first one, because in view of the expansion of courses with technological mediation, as we could see in the graph that I shared before, it is pertinent to build investigations on the subject to fill gaps in the literature and also to build a solid basis for decision making in the area. In addition, it is necessary to make researches about specific kinds of knowledge in that format. For example, the practical knowledge that happens and need to be learned in physical education courses. And because of that, our general objective is to analyze how that kind of knowledge, the practical knowledge, is addressed in these courses. And we have six specific objects in the doctoral thesis that is being developed. The first one is to identify which values that digital technology carry in Brazilian context and how this can impact technology mediated education. And we did that through a narrative review, and that is part of our theoretical framework. And the second objective is to analyze the production of the last 10 years on physical education in distance learning. We did this through integrative review, and we did this to understand what the literature have already produced about the topic. Our third specific objective is to discuss the official information on the approach to practical knowledge in physical education. We did this through a document analysis with the pedagogical projects of the courses in public institutions. Um, the results of these two procedures here will be presented in this presentation. And The other three is still in development, and we are analyzing interviews, and we are planning focus groups, and we want to map the limits and alternatives to approach that kind of knowledge in context with technology. And we want to verify the perception of professors, students, and coordinators of programs related to public institutions in physical education in Brazil to understand how they develop that kind of knowledge in this context. And we want to compare all that data to analyze how that kind of learning process happens and which are the possibilities and the limits of the use of digital resources, as for example, videos, to learn that kind of knowledge. And now I will discuss briefly our theoretical background, um, starting by asking how can we understand distance learning using digital technology and physical activities in physical education. To understand digital technology, we use a perspective based on critical theory of technology that understands technology as something that carries values from the society and also that can be controlled by people. And we understand that in Brazil, those values can be explained through the concepts of neoliberalism and digital colonialism. And to understand physical activities, we use a comprehension that understands internally those activities using the classification provided by motor praxeology, uh, understanding the internal logical of those kinds of activities, those practical activities. Motor praxeology provides a comprehension of that kind of practice based on the interaction that is required between the people who is practicing that kind of activity. For example, in soccer, people have interaction with teammates and with opponents. And because of that, motor praxeology classified that kind of activity as a social-motor activity. Uh, on the other hand, motor praxeology also classify activities who does not require that kind of interaction. And the name for that kind of practice is psychomotor activities, as for example, artistic gymnastic, where the athlete does not interact with partners or opponents when they are practicing the activity. And also, we understand physical activities, understanding its role in power dynamics with the concept of corporal capital that understands that physical activities, sports, and other practices have a role in lives of the students, and it can impact the way they search for jobs and that experience that they have with that kind of activities as students of physical education can impact their future in the profession. And now I will present our preliminary results. I will discuss about the integrity review that we did and also about the document analysis. And we did the integrity review to understand what the literature discussed about the topic. We searched for papers, for Brazilian papers to understand specifically the literature produced in Brazil. And we found 9 papers discussing that topic in 2 platforms, Cielo and Periódicos CAPS, which are platforms that present papers to researchers, and we organized those 9 papers in 3 categories. The first one, they talk about teaching and evaluation methodology in physical education. The second one, they discuss about physical education training offered in universities. And the third one, they discuss about characteristics of training in physical education distance learning. And we uh, we found 2 main discussions in that material. The first one is about the issue of face-to-face activities and the use of digital technology to make that kind of practice remotely. Um, we understand that distance learning in Brazil can have face-to-face moments. Uh, the new rules to the modality require that kind of moment, and it is considered important by some works. But the possibility of developing practices remotely is also mentioned by those papers. As for example, one of them explain how to use videos to provide that kind of learning to students of that kind of course. And we've raised the question, uh, a hypothesis that psychomotor activities, those one without interaction with partners or opponents, have a greater potential for remote work than social motor one. Uh, those one like soccer that require interaction with partners and opponents. And in this process of learning that kind of knowledge with digital technology, we understand, we have that hypothesis that psychomotor activities would have a greater potential for that than sociomotor ones. And in other words, even considering the relevance of face-to-face moments in the learning process of physical education, we cannot ignore the contribution that some resources from digital technology can bring to that process. And in particular, considering concerns about digital colonialism that are related to public policies in Brazil, uh, and the concerns about the use of resources from international companies in those institutions. And the second topic that we found in the papers is related to the expansion of vacancies and the quality of courses offered in those institutions. Um, the association between the expansion of courses and the quality seems to be a concern present on those papers. And it is possible to highlight the idea that technologies may not be the problem in the quality discussion, but rather the way they are designed. And those authors from a paper that we found raise a question pointing to how the problem may be the neoliberal values based on profit that guides those courses rather than the existence of a technology mediated education. And our document analysis were made with the pedagogical projects of the courses. And we did this with 9 institutions in Brazil. All of them are public institutions. And we organized that discussion in 3 main topics. The first one is related to the topic of digital colonialism. And as we did not find many reference to the use of resources from international companies in those documents, that kind of resource is developed by the institutions, and the majority of those documents. We understand that the concern raised by Mian with the influence of colonialist neoliberal rationality in public universities may not apply to the courses analyzed. And the second discussion that we raise based on those documents is related to the classification of motor praxeology in sociomotor and psychomotor uh, activities. And we found that the psychomotor activities the are predominant in those documents. And we ask ourselves, and this is something that we want to discuss more in the work, would this greater frequency of psychomotor domain in the courses allow a greater adaptation to the use of digital resources and in those courses? And the last discussion that we raise based on the document analysis is related to the access to practices that outside university are difficult to reach, as for example, those activities that are too expensive and students may not access outside the university. And we understand that this is an opportunity to them to learn about those activities. And this is something that can contribute to their future in searching for jobs and other moments. And we question if the access to knowledge of that kind of knowledge is being by uh, the use of digital technology, as for example, the use of videos to them to learn about that kind of activity, if it would impact the access to that kind of opportunity to them. And our next steps, we are analyzing the interviews with specialists, physical education and motor praxeology to understand the limits and the possibilities of the use of digital technology to the learning of that kind of activity. And we will also develop focus groups with people involved with physical education, higher education courses in Brazil in public institutions. We want to understand how that kind of learning process is developed. And then we will analyze all that data together, trying to understand how that learning is developed and trying to create a contribution to improve that kind of process in those institutions. Those are the references that we use to prepare this presentation. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here today and for your attention. This study was financed em part by the Coordenação de Aperfeiçoamento de Pessoal de Nível Superior. It was developed during the doctoral scholarship granted by the agency. And this concludes the presentation. Thank you.